Well, good evening, morning, afternoon, whatever it is. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another Technolive. It feels like it's been ages. It's only been a week, but still feels like ages. As always, I'm Jack, and this week I'm not joined by Dan.
No, you're joined by me. Hi, everyone. It's Nia. I've done a few streams with Dan before, but this is the first time me and you have teamed up, Jack.
Yeah. So Nia's agreed to help out today, uh, just for the banter,
I'll do my best.
and yeah. Although it is tradition, we need to start talking about the weather
I mean, all
because
I can do. Go for it.
yeah, well, I have to say, worst weather today. It started out one of the most beautiful days, had a lovely morning, and now it's just grey and miserable.
It might be grey and miserable, but it's still too warm for me. That's the
Oh,
problem.
yes. Goodness
I
gracious, it's warm.
I don't really mind whether it's grey out or sunny, but the heat I cannot stand at all. That's the one thing I cannot tackle at all.
Anyway, that's the weather news out the way. Um, we yeah, got my little schedule up here. Notice it's a week out of date because I can't, you know, I wasn't able to get Photoshop to work today. But yeah, a little update on the Techno Clubs. We've just finished week 4 and going into week 5. So my lot, we did some fantastic 3D modeling, and I got to see some great designs from my club members. So that's what we did there. And over on Dan's club, which happened yesterday, we had a little go at some Minecraft mazes, and we certainly got some good mazes out of all our members there. So if you went to those clubs, it's great to hear. If you're not in, yeah, using my words, Jack. If you've not joined a club and you want to, we will be stopping it for the summer holidays. But when we get back, oh, I don't know whether you can hear that, Nia.
I can hear that. What's going on?
Um, oh my goodness, that's loud. My neighbour has decided to start drilling.
Oh wow. Okay, that must be loud to be able to hear it through your microphone. I feel very sorry for you.
Yeah, actually, I don't think those on. Oh, that's very distracting. I don't think anyone on stream can hear it because I've got all my filters in place.
Fab.
But if you can hear it, I do apologize. It might be a dud stream if all you can hear are drills. I think we can press on. I'm just gonna have to say sorry, Nia, for all the drill sounds.
Again, I know your suffering is greater than mine.
In any case, without any further ado, we might as well talk a little bit about what we're doing today. And I thought I'd introduce a favorite game of mine. That's not it. This is it. Yeah, so 20 years ago, which makes me feel very old, this little game called Res came out. And it came out on the PlayStation 2 and the Sega Dreamcast. And it's an on-rail shooter. So it's 3D, and you have to, attack these enemies. And yeah, it's kind of cool. And I thought what we'd do is we'd have a go at trying to recreate it in MakeCode Arcade. So yeah, that's our challenge today. And I
Ama-
thought, yeah,
Amazing. I will say, Jack, I have no idea what an on-rails shooter means. I know what a shooter is, but what does the on-rails bit mean?
now this is the cool bit. So normally a shooter, or a first-person shooter, you just you walk around the world.
Hmm.
But an on-rail shooter, you get moved around the world for you. It's as if you're in a. It's like you're standing on a train,
Right.
and
Yeah, yeah.
it's taking you on a route. And the thing about this one, it kind of brought this topic, this thing suddenly became amazingly popular because of this game.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's got great music, and I want to show you a little bit. And I'm not going to talk through the music so much because the music's great. I'm just gonna enable the music. Okay, you might be getting a little bit of that through. Let's have a little look-see. So this game... Oh, big warning, if you don't deal well with flashing lights or certain colour patterns, this isn't the game for you. Yeah, this game, you are a piece of software, and you're actually kind of like antivirus, and you're breaking into a system to get rid of all the viruses in the computer. And the reason I thought we'd have a look at this today is because, of course, my Technoclub are doing all sorts of game art and animation. I think this has got one of the best art styles.
Fabulous. Again, there is already quite a lot of colour. There's a lot going on. It's it's lovely, you know.
But yeah, the on rails bit is I'm always moving forward, and all I'm controlling is where I'm aiming. As soon as I press the go button, it sort of sets off all these projectiles. And I thought we'd have a go at making this in MakeCode Arcade, which seems impossible because this is all 3D and advanced. But we're going to try our best. And it's not going to be great, but it's just going to be cool. Anyway, I need to stop playing this because otherwise I will play it for literally 5 hours. It is my favourite game.
Did you get it when it came out?
No, I was a bit too young then. Oh, sorry, I think threw a missile at me. Yeah, no, I came to the PlayStation 2 a lot later because I always like to be a console behind. So whilst everyone was on PlayStation 3s, I was on PlayStation 1s. And so on.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough of that. Still, it's a really cool game. That PlayStation 2, if you want to check it out. Let me just switch my audio back. Oh, it's an all big mess of things today, but that's our brand. That's how we usually run these. So we're gonna have a go at that in MakeCode Arcade. So if you want to follow along, of course, the address is arcade.makecode.com. And we're going to go ahead and make a new project. And we can call it whatever we like. On Rails Shooty Bang Bang game. Why not?
Are on-rail shooters, are they something that you see a lot of today, or were they very much sort of their time?
They've got a very bad reputation, which is a bit weird, because I think they're kind of cool. Yeah, the thing that's different about Res was the thing that made it stand out was it had lots of colour and lots of interesting artwork, and of course some really good music. Yeah. But yeah, apart from that, a lot of them aren't. You play an on-rail shooter today, and in the comments below, people will be saying, "Oh, this is cheap," or "This isn't very good," that kind of thing. So it's not. I don't think that's very fair. I think they can be quite fun. But yeah. So to get the kind of 3D effect, I thought what we'd start with is making a kind of a cool moving animation. And you can do animation in MakeCode Arcade. It's just the bit I want to do is a bit fiddly. So in the game, you can see there's these kind of wire frame walls all sliding past, and we're going through all sorts of these interesting environments. And I thought we could have a go at creating one of our own. And I've done a little thinking about this. And yeah, I think I got a bit of an idea. So I'm going to start by loading in a background image. And to do that, I'm going to go to Scene. And I'm going to set the background image to something. Okay. Oh, that makes little pop sounds. I forgot MakeCode Arcade did that. Oh, that's not too loud. And yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and make a sort of 80s grid pattern. And it's going to look like you're flying through an 80s grid environment. But it's not a 3D game. It's a 2D game, but it just looks like you're flying through this. And this is quite common in lots of older games where they kind of trick you into thinking it's 3D when it's actually 2D. So, yeah. Now, if we were doing as this sort of grid pattern, I'd start with let's go for a nice. Let's go for the nice traditional kind of neon blue. That's the common one. And if I go and put my line tool on, I'm gonna try and aim for halfway down the page. And there-ish. I'm going to start drawing out a little pattern. And of course, if you wanted to try more impressive patterns, feel free. I'm just giving this one a go. And whilst I'm having a go at this, what do you think of the whole weird 80s nostalgia thing, Nia? Do you think it's played out too much, or do you think there's more cool 80s stuff to look at?
Oh, I don't know. Well, the thing is, it's all a bit before my time, and I feel I sort of missed out on it. I don't know very much about the 80s. I just associate it with Thatcherism. That's all I know about it. So yeah, my knowledge of the 80s comes from Ashes to Ashes, I think.
Oh, yeah. To everyone watching, don't watch that. You're too young.
You are too young. You are definitely too young.
But it's still a good program, so remember that for when you're older. But yeah, no, it's a lot of people say it's all works in 30-year cycles.
Yeah,
so
I'm definitely
people in the 80s were really into the 50s.
Definitely, and I'm definitely seeing when I'm on Instagram and stuff, there's a lot more like 90s references, I think. I think we're definitely moving into that, certainly when it comes to fashion and things like that. I don't know if there are any great 90s video games you think that maybe in a few months' time you might be trying to replicate.
Don't get me started on 90s video games. That's my bread and butter. But yeah, no, I think there's some cool things. And, people say, oh no, we're all just copying the 80s and all that. But I think if it gives you fun, then why not?
Absolutely. And as you say, like, people have always been copying things. Like, it is a weird idea that it's a new idea, or that it means that we've got no originality. But yeah, people have always done that. They've always taken references from other things that have happened before. And I think a lot of I've definitely seen games where like they've sort of been playing on the nostalgia, but actually the colors aren't quite the ones you would have had then. They just sort of like the ones that you remember because you were a kid and you thought they were these really bright, amazing colors. So yeah, a lot of the time it's not quite as retro as you think it is.
That being said, if it's got old computers in it, I'm happy. Anyway, I think I'm nearly there. It's not my neatest work. In fact, it's gonna. Yeah, I could do a lot more to make this a lot neater, but I don't want to keep us here for, as I said, 5 hours. I do want my dinner, actually. Homemade pizza tonight, apparently. I say nice. Apparently, I'm the one who makes it, so... We'll see. It might just be toast, baked beans on toast if I'm too lazy. Or it might be homemade pizza.
I mean, baked beans on toast, you've got the tomatoes, you've got the bread. There's not that many steps to make it a homemade pizza, right? You add some cheese on top. What's the difference?
Yeah. A very beany pizza. Anyway, so I've got the start of an 80s grid design, and what I could do here is I could start putting lines across, and it look like it's stepped out of the movie Tron from 1982, or it looked like any kind of wallpaper that people get nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And I could do that, but I want to add some sort of movement to this. And if I were to add some movement, what I'd have to do is animate it so that the lines were kind of coming towards us.
Yeah.
But animating that would be very tricky because I'd have to erase each line every time and redraw it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot to do. So I'm going to cheat, actually. I'm just going to leave it so it's the vertical lines. I'm going to do a little tricksy thing with with sprites that can make it look as if that's happening. So I'm going to click done on that one. And we should see it loads into the simulator. There we are, and it looks quite nice over there. Oh, there goes the drill again. Oh, I'm so glad I've got the filters installed.
I hope you haven't been putting up with this drilling for a long period.
No, this has literally started the minute we started streaming.
But what I mean is I hope your neighbour hasn't been like doing building work, for the last 6 months or anything like that.
No, they did try and get a fridge up the stairs last stream, which it's always interesting. Anyway, so I've got my grid background. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw the lines, but I'm going to make the lines a sprite, and I'm going to keep sending the lines down the grid. And that will make it look as if it's moving and give it a very nice animated effect. And I'm going to use my favourite MakeCode Arcade block, which is on-game update.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, sorry, scratch that. I mean on-game update every 500 milliseconds. I forget on-game update's too fast. On-game update every 500 milliseconds. It's a bit slower.
Yeah.
And yeah, in this one, we're going to create a new sprite, and that sprite's going to be our lines. So I'm going to click sprites, and I'm going to click set my sprite to blank sprite of kind player. And as always, and I mean, it's been a while since we've done MakeCode Arcade, but I say as always, my sprite's a terrible name for a variable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to click the drop down arrow and click rename variable. And this is going to be my line.
I spend a huge amount of time telling people how important it is to give things decent names, or their variables decent names, and I never do it myself, and then I come back to something 6 months later and I've got no idea what I've done or why I've done it. So one day I might learn the importance of naming a variable, but it's going to take me a while, I think.
I mean, it does get a little bit important to name your variables when you're looking at my sprite 1, my sprite 2, my sprite 3, my sprite 4, and you're not sure which one's the right one. But yeah, this is we're going to set the kind of this sprite to be something new, because in the options I've got player, projectile, food, enemy, and it's not really any of those. So I'm going to add new kind, and this is going to be my background, because it's kind of a background sprite. And I'm going to click in the grey blob to enter the sprite editor. Now this is going to be a line that goes across the whole screen, so it needs to be as wide as the screen is, which is 160 pixels. So down in the bottom left, I've got this these two numbers. These change the size of the canvas, and I'm going to change the first number to 160, and that makes it a lot wider. Also, it's just going to be one line, so I don't need lots of space for one line. I just need it to be 1 pixel high. So I'm going to change the other number to 1, and that just gives us a very long line.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, we can make it, if we choose the right color, we can make it a blue line. So now if you can imagine these sort of falling down the screen, it's going to have a cool effect. So I'm going to click done on that. So every 500 milliseconds, we create a line, and we need to somehow get it to fall down the screen. Well, first things first, I'm going to add in a special control that kind of makes sure that it's always in the background. Because otherwise it might go over the top of our player sprite when we add that in. And it would look like your player sprite's behind bars, so it wouldn't look the same. Ooh, we might have to hang on a second because we've lost the kilobits per second. Gone down to 2,000 kilobits per second. That's not good. Has my neighbour drilled into my internet cable?
I was just wondering the same thing.
Oh, what's up with the internet today? Just as we were getting started with streams all over again, we get all these problems. Loud neighbours.
I mean, this is how you know it's live, right?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You know, it's...
Yeah, we're running at half the normal kilobits per second that we usually run, which means that the stream might be a bit laggy or it might not be very smooth. No idea what's causing that. Let's blame the Welsh weather.
Right, it's too hot for the internet to work.
Yeah, all the internet cables have melted.
To be fair, you say this, but there's definitely been, I don't think it's affected the internet, but up in Canada, there's lots of infrastructure problems because of the high temperatures that they've been having. Again, I don't think it's necessarily affecting the internet, but it's definitely affecting a lot of their infrastructure because of the horrible, horrible weather they're having.
Maybe that's it. Maybe my internet comes from Canada. Anyway, in the sprites menu, I'm going to pick up this set my sprite X to 0 block, because in here we can actually change some of the properties of a sprite, some of the what the sprite does. And the thing I want to change, well, first things first, my sprite doesn't exist. We need to change that with a drop down arrow to line. And we don't want to change its X property. I want to change its Z property. And if you've done MakeCode Arcade a lot, it's probably not the case that you've seen depth before. But depth is basically how you stop things appearing above other things. So if the depth is a low number, it appears in the background. But if it's a high number, it appears in the foreground.
I was wondering when you were doing this, because I was thinking if it's 2D, then your line actually needs to your line needs to change size. But if you can use the Z axis, this makes more sense to me now.
Yeah, so I've set it to -100, which it sort of guarantees it'll be right at the back, and it won't, it won't appear where it shouldn't. And we should also probably get it moving as well. Because at the moment, it's just going to create a line and the line's not going to go anywhere. So in sprites again, I'm going to scroll down to, in the physics section, the set velocity block. And again, my sprite doesn't exist, so change that to line. And it feels like it's been so long since I've said these words, but for X, if it's a positive number, so like 50, it means you're going right. If it's a minus number, it means you're going left. We don't want the line to go left or right. We just want it to stick in the middle.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change VX to 0. And then the VY, if it's a positive number, that means you're going down. But if it's a negative number, that means you're going up. So I'm going to have it going down
Hmm.
And yeah, you can put in whatever speed you want. So I might put in 20. If that's too slow, I might turn that up. And yeah, that's all we need to get a really cool effect. So if I maximize my simulator, we can have a little look. And there we are. It takes a little while for them to get going, but doesn't that look like you're flying through an 80s landscape?
Absolutely.
It looks very retro. It looks like something I run on a Sinclair ZX Spectrum or a Commodore VIC-20.
Very nice. I suppose the benefit of an on-rail shooter then is you don't need to. It's the same speed in the background all the time. You don't need to worry about if your player's moving faster or something.
So we're not actually, our player's not actually going to be flying through a 3D environment. They're just going to be standing still.
Mm-hmm.
But because it's got this background behind it, it looks like they're flying through a 3D environment, which is cool.
No, that's really nice. I think it looks really, really good.
And
it looks a lot more complicated than the few blocks that you've put up. You know what I mean?
And you could, of course, do that by pixel animation.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that would be a lot of drawing and a lot of animation. I'm going to change a couple of things. You can change all of these numbers except for the depth, of course. So I can make them slide down the screen faster, or I might make that a little bit slower, so maybe 10 for the Y value. And I can change how many how fast each line is created, so I can turn the on-game update every 500 milliseconds to maybe every second.
Yeah.
And I'll have a different effect, and it'll look like the player's going slower, or flying slower.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and by controlling those two numbers, we can actually make it look as if the player's speeding up or slowing down, so that it looks like they're actually flying. So yeah, we can control that. And if you wanted to make a racing game, you could do that quite easily. Instead of a sort of neon 80s grid, why not have a road with things like trees and signposts going down it rather than lines?
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, let's put an end to that. That's just a nice little bit of setup just to get us a background. And that's all we've done. We've just added a background.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like we've been talking a lot for not having done very much. But yeah, we should probably add a main character. So I'm going to go to sprites and I'm going to set my sprite again. Question for you, Nia.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think our main character should be? So in Res, the main character is a piece of software that looks like a kind of, computer-generated human.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What do you think? What do you think our game is calling out for?
Oh goodness. Oh, I don't know. I'm trying to think what sort of character you'd have in an 80s grid. I don't know what was big in the 80s. What was going on?
Hair was big. Lots of robots, lots of interesting sort of robots or half human, half robots, that kind of stuff.
Oh, cyborg of some description. Yeah. I don't know. Should we do a? Yeah. Can you give me a half human, half robot of some sort?
Something, I can try. I'm browsing to see if the asset, the built-in gallery has anything I can use to save me doing all the drawing. I don't think it has.
Or just anything sort of, like an old-fashioned future, which I know doesn't sound doesn't sound like it makes sense, but does.
It does have a computer. So what about a computer that has a human in it? Like, there's a very... And again, this might be not suitable for the younger of you out there, but there was a very popular sort of TV character called Max Headroom, who was a human trapped in a computer.
I totally missed the adventures of Max Headroom. That's a fabulous name. Excellent. I mean, can we say that human trapped in a computer, is there some sort of metaphor for being stuck on Zoom for a whole year?
Yeah, might as well. I like that. It's poetic. So yeah, I've made a character that's a computer with a human stuck in it. I know it's just a smiley face, but I've never been great at drawing humans. So I'm gonna have the player character, and I'm gonna have them at the bottom, because this will show them as they're the ones, flying through this world. So I'm gonna have them towards the bottom of the screen. So probably should set their position. So I've gone to the sprites menu, and from physics I can pick up the set position block. And I can set player character position to be, well, if it's towards the bottom, might need it somewhere around. There we are. Yeah, why not? Let's see how that looks. There we are. And yeah, so this is where we're going to make it slightly different from a normal game. Mm-hmm. So a normal game, you'd expect the player character is the one that does the moving.
Yeah.
What we're actually going to do is we're going to have it so it's the sort of the aim of the player character that's moving, rather than the player character themselves. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to have another sprite, and that's going to be sort of our aiming. Oh, it's got a horrible word that I can never pronounce properly. It's got a proper name, the reticule.
Reticule is a new one on me. I have never heard of a reticule.
Yeah, so the reticule, I think it's pronounced reticule, I hope it is the sort of the cross in the middle of a screen that you aim with.
It never occurred to me that would have a name. Oh, cool. Well, I have learned something today. It was worth turning up. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, don't ask me to spell it, though. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set another my sprite to a sprite of kind player, and of course I'm going to rename I'm going to make a new variable, and they might not always be called reticules. I've also seen them called crosshairs.
Crosshairs, the word, if you said crosshairs, I'd know what you were talking about.
Yeah. Crosshairs are usually if you're sort of, looking through the magnifying bit of a gun.
Yeah.
But I've called this one crosshairs, and it's another sprite, and it's... Yeah, it is... well, let's just be sure we're not going to make it a player, because it's not a player. We're going to make it something new. So I'm going to click the drop down arrow and change it to a new kind. I'm going to make this the... Well, I'm trying to think of a new word. Well, let's use reticule for this one.
Do it.
Yeah, why not? I just want to make sure that I'm not kind of confusing things by having too many things of the same kind.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it gives me... if I now go into the blob, I could choose what the reticule looks like. So some games have it as a circle. I can't draw a circle very well. Some games have it more kind of like a crosshair. But one of the things that you usually see is it's often clear in the middle. So you can actually see what you're aiming at rather than sort of guessing wildly.
Yeah, I will say, sorry, I have just looked up reticule And it is exactly what you say it is. But it's also a woman's small handbag, typically having a drawstring and decorated with embroidery or beading.
Oh, okay.
So it's covers a lot of ground in one word.
I've learned something new today. So if you want a small handbag, you can always look for a reticule.
Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. Anyway, I've set my crosshairs, so now I've got some crosshairs on the screen, and that'll be where I aim with. What I aim with.
Yeah.
What I am going to do though, because this is the bit that we're aiming with, I'm going to make this the bit that gets controlled and moved around.
Yeah.
So in the controller menu, I'm going to pick up the Move My Sprite with buttons. And, of course, it means the buttons on the gamepad. It doesn't mean, the Cinderella character or, buttons on a shirt. And what we're going to do is we're going to move the crosshairs around. Rather than the main character, we're just moving what we're aiming with. And with that in place, we've now got a kind of aiming system. Which is kind of cool. At least I like to think so. Yeah. Anyway, we should probably have something to shoot at.
What's Max Headroom's big villains in the TV series?
It's kind of corporate America. I'm not sure we can represent that in pixel art very well.
I mean, you could do briefcases, I suppose.
Maybe. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating enemies that sort of fly in off screen. And for that, I'm going to use another one of my on-game update every however many milliseconds.
Yeah.
But I'm going to set it to happen at a random time. So this block happens every half a second. If I go to the math panel, which is always difficult for me to say, if I go to the math panel, I can find this pick random block.
Yeah.
And in there, I can put in some numbers to give it a random time. And this is in milliseconds. So at the moment, it's going from 0 to 10 milliseconds. That might be a bit small. I might have something like 5,000 to 10,000. So every 5 to 10 seconds, we'll get a new wave of enemies.
Okay, so you're going to do them in waves, not just individuals turning up.
Yeah,
nice.
Why not? Well, let's start with individuals, just for testing, and then we can up it to waves if we need to. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to go to sprites, and I'm going to create a new sprite with the set my sprite block. And again, it's not my sprite, it's drop down, new variable, and this is going to be my enemy sprite. No, that's a reserved word. Enemy mean person. That's another word for enemy, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure that's in the thesaurus.
Unless you're the mean person and your enemy is actually the nice person. But yeah, mean person.
Mean person will do the job.
Oh dear.
Oh.
I think we'll have to pause a second. Okay. So I need to call my internet supplier. We've dropped down to 800 kilobits per second.
I mean, you did say you wanted to do some funky graphics, and I can tell you, it looked lovely on the live stream.
Yeah, but 800 kilobits per second, that's worse than a telephone call.
Ooh.
This is unprecedented. I've never had this happen before. Oh dear. Interesting. Okay. We've not dropped any frames though. It's sending every frame. It's just it's sending them really low quality. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Would you be able to take a look at the live stream, Nia, and tell me if it's usable quality or whether it's...
Yeah, I am watching the live stream, and it seems to be okay at the moment, I think. I haven't got the sound, but there was definitely a period where it all went a little bit blurry.
Ooh, dear.
But it wasn't very long. But yeah, when you said, "Ooh, something's happening," it went a little bit psychedelic. But now I think we're okay.
Yeah, something's it's got it out for me today. Yeah, we're hopping around about 2,000 kilobits per second. That's just not good. Oh well, maybe it's fine. Maybe we sound a little bit like robots. But yeah, we'll press on because why not?
The show must go on, right?
Yeah, the show must go on. So of course, this meme person, it's not going to be a player. It's going to be an enemy. So we click the drop down and change that to enemy. We should probably choose a design for it. So I liked your idea of the briefcases fighting us. But to save time, what about... Oh, there's lots of options here. What about... burgers. Burgers, yeah, why not burgers?
Yeah. I mean, it's also a symbol of corporate America, right?
Yeah. Also, if we're including burgers, it's starting to look very much like one of those games in the 80s that was paid for by McDonald's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're going to set the mean person to burgers of kind enemy. We're also going to sort of start them at the top of the screen. So I'm going to set the position. So set my sprite position in the sprites menu. I don't want this to be my sprite. I want this to be the mean person. And the position it should be, well, it needs to be in the middle of the screen and it needs to be at the top. So at the top, y equals 0. That's the very top. But x, well, for the middle, we need to change x to being around about 80. So when I took this in, you can see that it turns up at the top of the screen. So we're setting the position to 80 and 0 for y. So that starts them at the top of the screen. We should also probably get it sort of coming towards our player.
Yeah.
And for that, we'll need to set the velocity. So I again into the sprites menu, and again set the velocity.
I'm just gonna let you know. I think we had a little bit of blur on the live stream, so you might want to just go through those numbers very quickly.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we're setting the mean person's position to x equals 80. Y equals 0. That'll put them at the top of the screen. And we're setting the mean person's velocity. Well, if we set it to 50-50, that'll mean it'll slowly start at the top and then come down towards the player, but at an angle. It'll be going towards the bottom right.
Yeah.
We want that a little bit more random. We want to add some challenge. So rather than towards the bottom right, we might instead... Well, we could put in some random blocks. So back into the math panel with the pick random blocks. If I get 2 of those out and put them in there and change them to some certain numbers. Well, in the X area, if I go from something like minus 30 to positive 30, that means it could be going off to the left or it could be going off to the right, but not too much. So that's, that gives us a nice range.
Yeah.
For the Y, we always want it to be going down. So we don't want it to be any less than 10, but we don't want it any more than 30, let's say, because otherwise it might go too fast. Okay, so we create the enemy sprite, we set its position to the top of the screen, and then we tell it to fall down the screen, going in a kind of a different, in a certain options of directions.
Yeah.
So if I play that, we can see how that goes. So there goes the burger, and off the screen it goes, and then in 5 to 10 seconds later, another burger comes along. It goes off screen. Here's another one. So we've got a nice constant stream of enemies.
Fab.
And if we wanted more enemies, all we have to do is go to loops and pick up the repeat 4 times block. And we can pop that around all the code inside the game update, and that'll give us 4 enemies. And if we want 5 enemies, we could turn that number up to 5 or 400 or whatever.
Excellent.
So now we get our waves of enemies coming. And there we go. We're getting burgers thrown at us every 5 to 10 seconds.
Doesn't seem too bad a life, I'll be honest.
Free burgers. Yeah. So we need some way of shooting down the burgers. And I had to do a lot of thinking about this because in MakeCode Arcade, it's very difficult to sort of say, move towards this point, go towards this point. Because what we want to happen is we want the projectile, the sort of what we're firing, to come out of the player and go towards the target, go towards the crosshairs.
Yeah.
But if they always go towards the crosshairs, then that won't be very good because it looks like you're following all over the place. Ooh, I'm seeing the playback now. That is some blur.
Yeah.
I think we need to wait this one out actually because no one can see anything.
Yeah, it's not great.
Oh goodness, I don't know what's happened recently. It's not good. Okay, I think it's smoothed out a little bit now.
Yeah.
I do apologize, everyone. Don't know what's happened with my internet today. But yeah, if where was I? Yeah, so to get the projectile to go towards the crosshairs, very tricky to do. Either we set the projectile to follow the crosshairs. That's not going to be great because it means it'll always follow it no matter what. However, the other way of sort of deciding which direction it should go in, that requires a lot of maths. So what I've done is I've worked out a secret third way that I think works quite well.
Excellent.
And what we're going to do is we're on in the controller menu, on A button pressed, what we're going to do is we're going to put down a target, and then we're going to get the what's the word? Projectile to go towards the target. And we'll be putting down the target where the crosshairs used to be. So to do that, I'm going to create a new sprite on A button pressed. And I'm going to set its name. So drop down, new variable. This is going to be my, my target. Let's actually make that with a lowercase t, just to be consistent. And what I might have it as, I might have it as a sort of just a white box with maybe the corners erased so it looks a little bit rounded. A little bit like the target in Res looked like. And we don't want this to be a player. We want it to be, well, what is it? It's kind of its own thing. So I'm going to change it to add a new kind, and I'm going to make this a target. Okay. So when we press A, it'll create a target somewhere on the screen. Where do we want it to appear, though? We kind of want it to appear where the crosshairs are. So in sprites, I'm going to set the position of the target with the set position block. And target. I'm not going to set it to 0, 0 because that'll be up in the top left. That'll be useless to us. Instead, I need to set it to be wherever the crosshair is. So you need to kind of work out where that is. And we can do that in the sprites menu with these round MySpriteX blocks.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, these round ones will just, you know, if you hover over it, it'll tell you what it says. It returns the value of a property of an object. So one of the properties of the crosshair is its X position. So if I grab this and I put it in that hole, the X one there, and if I change the drop-down arrow to be the name of our crosshairs, then what we're doing is we're setting the target's X position to be in the crosshair's X position. Which is kind of cool. At least I think so.
It makes a lot of sense. It's a nice way of doing it.
Yeah.
And I suppose I'm wondering, because obviously you're leaving a target, would there be a way, could you just use a sprite that you couldn't see if you wanted to make it like very smooth?
Ooh, yes. So I've given my target a kind of an appearance. If you decided not to give it an appearance, that would, you know, it's not obvious. You get a different effect and look quite cool.
Yeah. Nice.
But yeah, all I've done here is I've repeated the same thing again with the crosshairs, but instead of giving it X, I'm now giving it Y. So I'm setting the position of the target to be the X position of the crosshairs and the Y position of the crosshairs. So if I play the game and I move the crosshairs around and I press A, I leave a target.
Fabulous.
And all we're going to do, and this is where it looks kind of cool and gets, you can see where res is coming from. We're going to have it so that when you press B, it'll send out a projectile to every target.
Oh, that's cool.
So it will look exactly like res plays. So, with the controller, on A button pressed, but this time I'm going to change it to on B button pressed. What we're going to do is we're going to have a look, try and find every target, and for every target we find, send it a projectile. So, on B button pressed, if I go to a loop, to the loops menu, I can pick up my favourite block in all of MakeCode, and it's the most boring block, but I love it because of all the different things you can do with it. But the 4-element value of list.
Ooh, sounds exciting.
It sounds exciting, but all it does, it looks through a list of things, and it says, okay, for each thing in this list, I need to do something. And at the moment, it's looking through list. List doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
We need to give it a list of things to look through. And I think MakeCode's updated recently because I found an excellent block, and it's very near the bottom. It's the fourth one up, and it's array of sprites of kind. And this one's quite cool. All it gives you is a list of sprites of a certain kind. And if I pick that up and pop it in where list was, what this for loop is now saying, for every player, if I choose the drop down arrow, I can change it for every target, or for every enemy, or for every background. But I want target in this case. So for every target, I can do something.
Yeah.
And what I want to do is I want to send out a projectile from the player character. So in sprites again, in this projectile section, I can set a projectile to a projectile blank from my sprite. So it's the second long projectiles block. I think it's the longest block in the sprites list, in the sprites menu. It is. It's the longest one. And if I pop that in there, of course, I'll need to change some things to get it to work properly.
Yeah.
So first things first, my sprite doesn't exist, but player character does. I should also probably change the X velocity and Y velocity.
Yeah.
This would be sending the projectile off in a certain direction. I don't want to do that. I want to send it in a very specific direction. So I'm going to set these both to 0 to start with. And then I'm going to change them. Well, I'm not actually going to change them. I'm going to do something else that will affect them later.
Okay.
And of course, we need to pick a design for our projectile. So, what kind of thing would a half human, half computer be firing at corporate America?
Oh, goodness. There's the question.
I mean, you could go nice and simple with fireballs. Or maybe a pigeon.
Yeah. I can see pigeons eating a lot of burgers. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. Or why not then? Why not have a pigeon? Actually, the pigeon's a little bit big for a projectile. We need something a bit smaller.
Yeah, let's stick to the fireball then, we know.
Yeah, fireball probably makes sense. Let's go for that one. And of course, you could draw all these yourself, but that takes a bit of time.
And skill, which I don't have, I think, a lot of the time.
Well, this is why I say everyone's got the ability to make pixel art. I mean, that's all that Monday Technoclubs are about. So yeah, maybe you should have come along to Monday Technoclub, where we just have a nice time and draw some cool art together.
Oh, that does sound lovely. I'll give you that.
Yeah. Anyway, once we set the projectile coming out of the player character, we should probably get the projectile to go towards the target. So if I go sprites, and here is where we're going to be cheeky. We're going to use this set my enemy follow my sprite block.
Yeah.
And we're going to pop it in there. And we're going to get the projectile to follow whatever target we're thinking about. So I'm going to set this to be a projectile. And we're not going to follow my sprite. So I'm going to take that out. Instead, we're going to follow value. And we're going to look at the top of this 4-element value loop. And I'm going to pick up that value and steal it and pop it in there. And all it's saying is for every single item in the list of targets, create a projectile and then set the projectile to follow that item.
That is nice.
And so, if I go to my game And let's make some targets. So I'm pressing A to make a target. Oh, I've done that very neatly. Let's do one that's not neat, just to annoy everyone. So I've got my targets. As soon as I press B, it sends out the projectiles.
Hey.
And the projectiles go and join those targets.
Very nice.
And it looks kind of cool. And at the moment, they don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if we sort of delete the projectiles when they touch the target,
yeah,
or touch a burger,
mm-hmm.
then we can get a pretty good game going.
Excellent.
However, I might need to leave that as an extension for people to have a go at because we're over time, I'm afraid.
Oh, goodness.
So, yeah. I thought I'd just quickly show off what I did manage, to sort of complete it. This is my rough version that I did earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I always do a rough version first just to make sure it works. And, well, when I do these rough versions, it should lead to a smooth stream, but apparently not today. There we are. Let's reload that one because it was being a bit slow. And it's still being slow. So maybe not as smooth as I thought it would be. I was hoping to do a very nice Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier.
Yeah.
But apparently not. Oh, there we are. So yeah, same concept. It's just I didn't, I've got different sprites.
Yeah.
But if this one I did a little bit differently. I did it so that rather than making lots of targets, you just make one target at a time.
Yeah.
But I kind of like the visual appeal of having all those projectiles go out at once.
Oh yeah, I thought that looked really, really cool.
Yeah, and obviously this one would be improved as well. So when the projectile collides with the enemy, destroy both the projectile and the enemy.
Yeah.
And of course you could add that to your score, or you could play a little sound effect, or all sorts. So there's lots of room for flexibility here. I think the main cool takeaway from this is, you could get some cool animated backgrounds and maybe a different look at a different style of game. The on-rail shooter.
It looks really nice. I think it does look really, really cool. And wouldn't have occurred to me to make something like that in MakeCode.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love about MakeCode. If you're ever bored, pick a genre of game, any genre, and see what you can do to try and sort of break MakeCode and get it to do things that it doesn't normally do, like a on-rail shooter or all sorts. Anyway, that's it for today, I'm afraid. Thank you ever so much, Nia, for coming along.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
No worries. And I don't have another schedule because, again, as I said, Photoshop decided not to work for me. Nothing's worked today. I think all computers in the world have given up on me. And I've given up on them. As soon as I click end stream, Windows Update will come in and delete everything. Anyway, next week, unfortunately, I don't have a graphic for it, but there's a reminder that there is the Home of the Future award ceremony going on. That's happening at the same time that Technolive usually would be. So I might be having Technolive a little bit earlier or a little bit later. Or not at all if it turns out that I no longer have internet. So if you want to catch next week, keep an eye out for that at a different time. If you look at the Technocamp's YouTube channel, you can see the schedule of a video, a couple of hours before the live stream actually happens. So that's a good way of telling. And of course, that's easier to tell if you subscribe and hit the notification icon, and you'll be able to know for certain. In case, I've already said thank you, dear, but thank you again.
No worries. Thanks very much.
Apologies for the drilling sound and the bad connection, but that's life. Have fun, everyone. Have a lovely evening.
Ta-da!